on the bus and went back home. And then I got a phone call that same day saying, oh, you can volunteer for the next 2 weeks. And then every day I took two pairs of clothes. I had my uniform and I had my clothes for when I get there. And there was actually quite funny because there's a lady in this cafe that the train used to stop at, and I'd get off and get changed and walk over to the viaduct. And that lady would notice me. I still talk to her today. Yeah, like I still have her on Facebook. She's like, well done, like you've done so well since your high school days. I should have mentioned that last night.
So how did she, like, tell me about that interaction? Like, did she call you out at all? Did she just say, hey, I know what you're doing, I've seen you get changed? Like,
yeah, a little bit. Like, yeah. She was like, so what are you doing? Because I had a lanyard, it said Fashion Week. She was like, oh, okay. And it wasn't until maybe the second or third year, because she owned the cafe, that she was like, have you been working since? And I'm like, no. And then, like, yeah, she's kind of blossomed ever since then. She actually came to my show last year. I love that stuff. Like, she was like, you've seen it from the beginning. So
she's seen, like, the hustle and the mischief that you got up to make your dream a reality, right?
Yeah, and then, you know, whilst you're volunteering there, like, back then, the Fashion Week was pretty, like, elitist. It was pretty much, you know, who's the what, and it felt kind of cool. Like, oh, yeah, I felt so cool. You know.
You were 15, did you say?
17.
17.
Yeah, about 17. About 15, 17? Yeah. And then that's how I got my first job at Trilly's Cooper.
Okay.
So what I did to get that, probably the second year that I volunteered, I actually snuck into an after party that George FM had. I snuck into a party, I got changed, I used my lanyard because you can go anywhere, and I went in there, took my lanyard off, and then I met a girl, oh my god, what's her name again? I think her name's Sarah. I met Sarah, and then because she had just started in the industry, so she really didn't know anyone. So I was like, oh yeah. So we started talking to each other, and then she said, oh hey, they're looking for an intern for like next summer. And then boom, I got my first internship at Trilly's Cooper, and I was there for about 4 years.
Far out.
Yeah. So during the time of my teenage years, I actually I didn't bunk school. They had what was called a star course or something.
Like a work experience.
Yeah. So I used that as my internship, but then I got a job during the holidays. Like I swept the floor, I sewed a button on, I took out the rubbish, I made people's cup of teas. I started from the ground up. And then I went to study. But I've been in there. I've been involved with Fashion Week for a very long time, and like going from that to where I am now, it's just like sometimes I gotta like sit back and like talk to that lady from the cafe shop and be like, shit, look at what's happened. Like, you know, humble beginnings, which is it's cool. It's cool.
Every artist I speak to, bro, they have this moment where like your hobby or your fascination or your dream slowly starts to shape into reality. Can you tell me about like when you started seeing things kind of fall into place or come together? Can you tell me about your like holy shit kind of how that all came about? Or even just a couple of things. I guess when was like a point where you thought to yourself, shit, this could actually turn into something? Or like last year I had no clue what I was doing. I just tried to, from my own experiences and my own, experience of Fashion Week, of, you know, study, all the combinations of everything that I had done in the last, 8 years, all kind of wrapped up into one show, really. And I didn't realise the benefit or the impact it had until it was after. So when you go from rags to riches kind of story, what I see it, it's like, I'm still talking about it a year later, I'm still like, oh, shit, like, I didn't realise it was gonna, stretch out this long, and
I guess that's the benefit of. I think that's the benefit of. Really thinking about what you want to do and how you process things. Because in my head, I left that show going, yeah, it was a success, but. And I think at every kind of but you do as a creative, that but can potentially be something even bigger. So, but at the same time, that question when my nephew asked me, where do you see yourself in 10 times? I'm going, no, I actually don't know yet. Because it's all fast forwarded for me so far. And then, especially being in this whole COVID buzz, it's like new normal. So it's, those are the things you got to start to consider as well. And I think I need to keep pumping. We all need to keep pumping in our industries. Because creative industries is going to be the last thing to look at when it comes to this new normal. And it's going to affect us very, very, a lot. Yeah.
You mentioned this as well, like you'd expect people to get a lot of mahi done during COVID, but that probably wasn't the case for you.
So it wasn't. It's out of it. You become lethargic. And for someone, like for me, I've always worked from home. I've always worked from a studio at home. It's like, it's out of it. You're different kind of mindsets and different way. People buy differently.
True.
People buy differently. Your customers start to adapt to different ways of doing things. But even that, I didn't like commodifying my stuff has never been the forefront of why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's never been the.
What is the driver? What is the forefront of what you're doing?
Acknowledging a knowledge that I know of that can be used for mokopuna, and that's the main thing. And also being able to enable the little Bobby an opportunity to see something where they can see themselves. Like I said last night, I always believe we think in 100 years. Well, what's this going to? How is this going to benefit them? It's about them. Yeah, I'm still young, but whatever I got, I can give. And and I know, and I say that because it's the impact that I have seen from what I've done, that it can impact something on younger generation.
It sounds like, bro, just from what I do know of you, and I admit that's very little, but it sounds like you're quite methodical. And you mentioned last night that you always talk by this auntie and that nanny and whatever, that there's always a method to the madness.
Yeah.
I cracked up when you said that because I've definitely had that lecture a couple of times myself from our beloved aunties. So when you look at what you're doing and what you've done and what you're going to do, has it been planned, or has it been madness that you can now make sense of?
Madness that I can make sense of.
Okay.
I was actually going to sign off last night with. So there's a method to my madness that madness is starting to be a little bit more articulate than what I thought. But when I think of there's a method to my madness, I think of what Korohurangi said, that when the world was created, it was a big bang, and Western worlds would call it chaos, but we call it cyclic forms of interaction, and that's how I see this madness. Is that it's a cyclical way of thinking. It's a circular way of thinking.
It's like interpretive madness.
Yeah.
Like a madness that's because madness automatically suggests like. What's the word? Like, I don't want to say controllable, but, unreadable, uncohesive, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, from what I'm getting from what you're saying is that madness can still exist, but it can still be, like, you can still dance with it, as opposed to just having no control and watching it make chaos around you. Is that right? Yeah.
Rather than thinking something linear, it's just going to be a constant form of redeveloping, reimagining, reconfiguring, and reclaiming. And those are the states of what that madness means to me. Yeah,
and once again, you mentioned COVID. Like that's kind of a perfect example, right?
Yeah.
It's forcing us to reinvent our way of thinking. Yeah.
Our madness.
Hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mean, bro. So we've covered kind of, I guess, how you came into doing your arts and also your own personal journey and your interaction with your siblings. Tell me more about your siblings. How do you guys kind of keep each other grounded and what contribution have they made to your mahi, do you think?
Wow, they all have different dynamics. They've all got different personalities. Fortunately,
Poor Nathaniel can't get a word in, can he?
No, probably not. It's a good lot. They all have for me, I have the privilege of going to each one individually, and they all have a benefit in terms of bouncing off. I really do. I bounce off my sisters, and
it's a plethora of perspectives,
yeah,
isn't it?
pretty much.
I know they don't hold back. So, so when you talk about how you've got your different consultants, you've got the best. You've got the best there is, because they don't hold back.
Hene, who is a hairdresser, has obviously been one of the core parts of my mahi, because on a way we have a little bit of a similar wavelength in terms of fashion, hairdressing and makeup. We can talk about those things. I can ask her opinion. She can deal with my stress. She knows how I go. And I think it's important. I also think it's important that you have those few people when you are in that creative space, know what you're like. Like if I'm stressed out, you already know not to ask if you need anything done, because I want to do it myself. So those are one of the biggest things. But then you need the sister. You just want to just listen to you. And then you've got the sister who you want to talk your head off.
Your kicker, your cuddler, everyone's got their role.
Yeah, pretty much. And then you've got my brother Nathaniel. He's just Nathaniel. He
does what he's told.
He's all right. He's good. He just comes for the good times. Yes, we just sit there and have a beer with each other.
And sometimes it's all you need, right?
Hard. And so, yeah. And then my older brothers and sisters, they've been my go-tos in terms of when it comes to spaces that I don't know about, like when I go to Te Poi'i, or if I go to my brother Joseph, it's always around our tikanga, and making sure that what I'm saying is right, and not making a fool of myself. They're my advisors.
I'll be very fortunate to have Te Poi'i as one of mine too.
Yeah,
bro, that's amazing.
Yeah. So my older brothers are always there for me, and my older sister's always there too. She's another dynamic to the space as well. And I also have beautiful nieces and nephews, and I'm fortunate enough to have my 3 sisters who have younger nieces and nephews, and a new one from Nathaniel. That I'm able to share that experience. What I'm doing now with them, because then they'll be like, "Oh, is that what Uncle does?" Because they never really get to see what I do.
Yeah.
And it's really for them to learn about.
Cool, bro.
Yeah.
Last question, and it's just, I guess, some call it my token question, but I just make sure I ask everyone who appears on the podcast. There's someone right now who's listening that's going through a bit of a rough time.
Yep.
Bearing in mind you're not a health professional, but what would be your best piece of advice to help them climb out of that dark spot at the moment?
Find what you love and just keep going at it. Just keep doing it. I always say to myself, your creativity is never going to leave you. You're never going to get up and it's going to go away. And if you work on it enough in your life, it's going to be with you forever. So, find that thing, whatever it is, and keep doing it. Make it, marry it. Because you're marrying it for life and it'll never leave you. Whether you forget about it or reimagine it. Yeah.
Awesome, bro. I lied. I said I had one more question. I actually got one more because I just remembered. And like we mentioned off air, I asked you if there's anything that you don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
Something that big that's happening at the moment here in Taranaki is the New Plymouth District Council have established a Māori ward.
Yep.
Do you have any whakaro in regards to this kaupapa?
I guess, one, well done.